So what you and I have got to do is get involved. In order to do this, we're starting a voters registration drive. It's going to be the ballot or the bullet. After we get our people registered, we can then organize that voting strength and channel it in a direction that will get immediate results for the benefit of our people. The ballot, or the bullet.
Who's that knocking on my door? What you trying to bother me for?
Uhuru, this Rubber Brandon coming to you live from the Ujima People's Progress Party Balance and Bullets video blog. I'm with my co-host.
Hey, Uhuru, this is Comrade Namdi. Glad to be with you all. Let's get right into it. Let's get some analysis. Let's build some Black power.
Absolutely. So we want to bring a very, very, very hot button topic, if not an issue that's been buzzing around the country, as well as the city and state of Maryland, Baltimore City, about squeegee kids or squeegee workers, for matter, the economy and what it means in light of a present, or if not a building case and trial and indictment of a latest squeegee worker who was a kid for actually being charged with murder. And this case involves a motorist who got out of his car to approach squeegee workers on the streets, open air in broad daylight, with a bat and a weapon, with the intent, or the looks of the intent as it's being put, to do bodily harm and damage, and was killed on the spot, shot and killed on that spot. And as a resident, lifelong resident native of Baltimore City, there are many narratives that are out there swirling from, well, maybe if the squeegee kids had jobs, they don't want to work, if they went to school, if only they should have did this, if and ands and buts were fifths, we'd all be drunk. So these are all institutionalized responses and reactions being put out from Black, brown, red, yellow, and white voters and motorists inside the city of Baltimore and state of Maryland. But what has to be looked at from the spectrum of the fish riding from the head down, as I would like to say, is that if anyone's squeegeeing, they lack the basic needs. You can bet your ass on that. Excuse my language. That they lack housing, transportation, something, because it doesn't say that there's any dignity or any less of being able to go outside, whether it be panhandles, squeegee windows, for what. But in the city of Baltimore, where there's the youth who are out defending their right to be able to exist with squeegeeing and also have to defend their lives when they're accosted, that answers a bigger question of how is it that we have a mayor that is okaying funds from the CARES Act, funds from the federal government to go out to 18 to 20-year-old women and young adults to be able to take care of themselves monthly, but there's no answer for squeegee boys or any fight back programs or institution coming out of City Hall. So I want to take that over with my co-guest and be able to chime in when possible.
So I think, first of all, we have to recognize this. The very existence of squeegee boys, quote unquote squeegee boys, the fact that people have to engage in that type of labor, right, to survive, is a criticism of the lack of economic opportunity, the lack of economic diversity in our community, the lack of jobs. You know what I'm saying? It represents a real failure of this economic and political system to address the really basic necessities, right? Because these are children, right? And what has been going on for years is trying to criminalize children, criminalizing the work in which they do to clearly survive. Young people who are involved with squeegee work are not coming from privileged families. They're not coming from families who have basic necessities, right? It's a dangerous job. It is a long job, you know what I'm saying? It's very competitive with each other. There's always the opportunity that someone might hit them. The police may, step over the line and arrest them or do worse, right? So it is not something that we should just sit up and act like the existence of squeegee is okay. The fact is that it is a criticism of our leadership. It's a criticism of the misleadership class in this city, in this area, that they allow these children have to survive in this manner. Now, I'm not saying that there's no dignity in trying to find work, because the truth is they could have been panhandlers and just asked for handouts. They have attempted to find something out of nothing. And we are holding them accountable for the mistake that we have made, right, as adults and as this misleadership class who have abandoned them, And we can't sit up here and act like we're going to just abandon these children. We have to have a real solution, right? We have to address what is going on so that we can honestly say, right, that this is something that we don't want because we're going to go out and fix it. You don't fix a problem by trying to arrest your way out of it. That's backwards. That's reactionary. Because all you've done, you've not changed the conditions that bring people out there. You've only punished them for trying to survive under those conditions.
Absolutely. Where the best explanation that I can have to be able to offer in this capacity, in my view, is capitalism in its smallest and less words used as possible. In this case, dealing with the squeegee economy, is making a way to survive out of no practical way to live. That is very much clear. And when we are looking at this to be able to speak about it, we talk about politicians, we talk about middle class, we talk about working class people of all spectrums, backgrounds, denominations, ethnicities, and beliefs are either absent-minded or very obtuse to actually seeing the contradictions of where do squeegee kids go or squeegee workers go after they can't squeegee anymore? Or where did they come from before? And
Absolutely.
These are just things to say, hey, well, just go into your corner and die. Just get away from my car. Just whatever you do, just get away from me while I'm passing my intersection to get to and from. And it's almost, apathetic, if not a very abysmal position that folks of all backgrounds, colors, races, creeds, and denomination had to detest the existence of life. Because after all, when there were times where there weren't any economies, there was barbarianism. You just straight club a person in the head and knock the next person out so you could be the first person in the child line, if not the second or third. So when we're competing or we're seeing squeegee workers and this economy itself exist outside the frames of capitalism to be able to demand that they have something to lead with, dignity or not, it begs the bigger question of why is it that these areas that the squeegeeing is happening are usually in areas where they are overdeveloped or developed enough, and they're not in the underdeveloped community because they're coming from those areas of the oppression to be able to say, hey, somewhere where we're coming from or where we don't have a place from, we have to escape. And people want to push you into the darkest corner of the earth, the world, and city and say, no, you do not. This goes for our LGBTQ kindred. This goes for our women, our sisters, our brothers, everyone. Like, they want to see this, and it's kind of pathetic. And there has to be a narrative for fight back and creating fight back programs for squeegee workers' economies and all those who are under the layers of oppression.
Let's talk about that, because I think it's also important in the criminalization of squeegee work. And therefore the young people who are out there, is that the real criticism that the state has developed, reactionary, is that they shouldn't be out there, right? That they should just essentially just die, as you said. They shouldn't have accessible means to get food, clothing, and shelter. But I can tell you this, in my community in West Baltimore, we've had squeegee boys off of Hilton, right? And it was a experience that you had to go through because we initially engaged in many ways. And we found out that a lot of the young people out there were homeless. They came from families with real deep contradictions, right? Families that were in real trauma. Some of them themselves had drug addictions, right? Some of them had learning disabilities. So you had a lot of young people who had problems they cannot fix. It's not just a question of, well, why don't you just go get a job? Some of these people are too young to be able to legally get a job. Some of these people had mental health issues that they can't have resources that themselves to fix. How do we do that? How do we make the burden of poverty, right, on young people who are trying to work to live, right? But let's talk about what happened, because I think it's also really important. A 14-year-old at the time shot and killed a white man who jumped out of his car. He thought he was going to be, I don't know what, Rambo or somebody, Batman or something like that. He jumps out of his car with a bat. I've engaged Squeegee Workers thousands of times. I have never had one bad incident with them, right? Yes, they do ask for money. Yes, they're persistent. I don't have no hatred in my heart for them. I understand that they're trying to survive. And if I had it, I had it. And if I didn't, I didn't. I can move on, and they can move on, to be honest, if you show them some love and some respect. So you jump out this car with a bat, and you got something that you wasn't prepared for. So now this guy's dead. And I'm not saying he should have died or he deserved to die, but the fact that he jumped out was that he saw a criminal. He didn't see somebody's child. He didn't see somebody in need. He didn't see somebody who needed help. He saw somebody who was offensive to him, somebody that he had to destroy because he took a bat out there to do it. And he unfortunately ran into somebody better prepared to defend themselves. And now we're told that we have to throw this young man away. He just turned 15 the day after, right? He turned 15, and now we're told that we have to allow him to be charged as an adult first-degree murder and possibly his life thrown away. No chance of being able to reevaluate, to get the help that he needs, right? How do we expect a 14-year-old to think like an adult? How do we expect a 14 who may have been hungry, who may have mental health issues, who may have drug addiction issues? We don't know what his problem is. Could be any of those things. How do we expect a 14-year-old child to be able to make the same decisions and have the same consequences of an adult? Because when we've abandoned him and left him to the streets to try to solve a problem for himself, I think those are the contradictions. Again, that is the criticism that we have to accept, and we have to wage a struggle to defend him and to defend all squeegee work, right? To be honest, I want them to get off the corners. I don't want them to be squeegee workers. I want them to have a dignity. I want them to have food, clothing, and shelter. I want them to have the kind of health care that they need. I want them to have the kind of education they need. I don't want them to have to work in the street.
It's a glaring contradiction that addresses the class analysis and the right individualism of the viewer, the eye of the beholder, where some of us are privileged to go to a different countries to see folks on the roadside panhandling and or whatever it is that happens, because I haven't traveled out of the country yet. But for those who have, maybe your stories can be able to bring some clarity to it. What is any different from that, whether that's an adult with a child there in a different country or a child in the place of an adult inside one of the most developed and also superpower countries in this nation and in this world, for that matter? That's one. Second, inside that individual, capitalist or rugged individualism that exists in our country, in our city, and in our states particularly, is that we have to also see that, well, there's someone who doesn't drive a car who's squeegeeing, who upsets someone who's in a car. So you tell me you go from every day complaining about inflation, gas, the cost of a car, the interest rates, refinancing a home, to whatever model car you have that you're like, okay, forget this car. I'm going to go beat someone's ass because they want to squeegee my window, or I'm tired of seeing them. That goes to show you that there's a level of psychosis, if not a direct social psychological trauma and madness inside of this country and in this city as well, that someone would have to, with more means to provide for themselves, are more angrier at someone accosting them or aggressively or panhandling or however you put it, to be able to say, hey, give me $1 and I'll go away. That lets us know that you're more angry at the person who's in the child line and tired of being hungry than you are at the person who has control of the world supply of soup, who's feeding everyone. You're less angry at your boss and your employer and the leader of this nation, who is not cutting taxes for the lower class and those middle and below, but are giving tax breaks and letting wages go through the roof. So I would say that this is definitely a class analysis for folks who make $100,000 or $150,000 and want to spit on those who make less than 50, but the persons you work for make $500,000 and up, and they don't want to give you your pension on time.
Yeah.
So what a contradiction is that, brother?
Let's talk about just one other thing. clearly, as you were talking about, like in other parts of the world where people are trying to live, trying to solve problems because governments aren't trying to solve problems for you, is that America would like us to disperse poverty. They don't want to get rid of poverty. They want to disperse it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to be confronted. And when I say they, I'm talking about not only the ruling class, but they've convinced working people that they don't want to see poverty as well. Poverty is the natural cause under capitalism. It has to exist, right? And we can't ignore the fact that poverty is growing throughout this region and throughout the world, and that we have to have a response, that we can't side with the bosses, right, to try to solve this problem. We have to galvanize working people, and even working people who could not currently have a job but would be workers. We have to organize a movement. I also think we have to start looking at real answers to this problem, right? Young people, if they are willing to work, they must be guaranteed a job. They must be guaranteed full employment, right, with a livable wage. We have to stand by that. People have to have a right to an education that serves their interests, right? Whether they want to go into college or trade skills or whatever. We have to make sure those things are available, right? We live in a country right now where housing is not a right. We have to make it a right so that young people don't have to do these kind of things, right? That families that they come from have a secure place to raise their children, right? To take care of themselves, right? We have to really address what is going on in this society, and we have to have a real platform that challenges a reactionary line that tries to criminalize squeegee work, because people are trying to work. They're not out here trying to rob people. It's not the desire of them to shoot people, to get in fights. They're out here really trying to earn a living with the best way they know how, and they're not prepared, right? They've not been given the skill to be able to compete with many of the people who are, as the comrade said, most of these are overly developed areas where they normally wouldn't be able to be anyway, right? So we have to be able to build a movement that really address these questions. We have to defend our young people so that they don't get railroaded. And we see that Ivan Bates may come in with a policy change that may criminalize and lock these young people up. We have to build a movement, and I'm calling on everyone who's seeing this to really move forward with building a movement. We want to reach out to our allies, comrade, man. We need to make sure that there's a real plan coming from working class movements to really defend the right of poor working class people to have a life, right, and not just to survive.
In closure to that, I want to double down too on that which you offer and offer something with it, is that we need to be able to see a family, a friend, have this conversation, but also give an individual the dignity without using the broad paintbrush theory that the Black working class community are criminals, because that's what the runaway narrative has become. Is that, okay, an absent parent, he's a criminal. This was intended, he was going to be a killer anyway, with or without a squeegee in his hand or a gun beside him. With mom or dad, however it be, a paternal or maternal household or non-nuclear, that's the narrative that's being put out. And we're asking to give African poor working class people, particularly in the city of Baltimore, state of Maryland, and in this country and the world over, the benefit of doubt of being individuals and not as broad paintbrush as an entire community of criminality and blood libeling of our youth, because you see the contradictions that we're facing as a community. My name is Brandon, and I'm with the Ujima People's Progress Party, and this is Balance and Bullets coming to you live. Uhuru.
Uhuru.